Mass Effect is a famous and innovative game from 2007, which is most well known for creating the dialogue wheel system, where conversations are dynamic and the player can steer them in certain ways according to the dialogue wheel choice. I played it back in the day on Xbox 360, but I don't think I ever finished it. So now, after all these years later, I've returned to finally finish it on PC. It takes place in a far future where space travel is commonplace and all sorts of different planets are colonized by hostile human-like species. There's a main evil villain that you chase around the game that you try to prevent from wiping out all of organic life or something like this. The plot is decent enough and sets the game up alright, though it can get quickly muddled and convoluted with all the different names and places you have to keep track of. At times it feels like it's trying to muddy the waters to make it seem deep. At some points you'll be scratching your head, wondering what the hell was just said, because they name dropped like 12 different places and names, and they all sound like weird places, so you're like, wait, what was that again? I forgot. So the game has you talking to NPCs, a lot of NPCs, navigating through this unique and innovative dialogue wheel, where on the left side, it usually goes deeper into the conversation, usually giving more side quests or extra objectives, and the right side of the wheel, especially the bottom right, tries to cut the conversation short and get to the point. I really appreciate how there's options to get to the point as fast as possible and spend as little time conversing to try to get back to the action. This usually makes your character seem like a try-hard badass, like Duke Nukem, where he always says cocky and arrogant responses like, "So what? What's your point?" Or, "Get to the point," or, "I don't care, hurry up," which I found pretty funny. Because yeah, I'm not someone who really cares that much about story or plots or writing in video games. Generally, I just want action and mechanics. So if you're like me, then you don't have to spend dozens of minutes in some boring conversation if you don't want to. The combat consists of picking up 2 squad members at the start of each outing, which is determined sort of randomly and sporadically. Sometimes when you travel between areas, a squad selection screen pops up, and you can choose 2 out of 8 or so possible members. Your squad members can either be fully combat focused or specialize in tech or robotics, which is sort of like magic abilities, but also helps you to open certain loot chests, and then you embark on the mission. The squad members work well enough with decent AI, and when they die in battle, they stay dead unless you use an ability to revive them, or until the combat is over, then they just stand up and go about as normal. The actual gunplay from the player's perspective is just okay. It's pretty minimal. You only have a few gun categories: shotgun, sniper, pistol, assault rifle. You can pull each of them out at any time, and you obtain loot, which upgrades the basic stats in these categories. I mostly used the shotgun category the whole game, because it did sufficient damage without needing a lot of levels invested into it, and also the sound effect wasn't as annoying as the assault rifle. And sniper rifle is obviously too annoying to use, always having to zoom in with a shaking scope, and who cares about pistols? So really the game basically has one viable main weapon, which is pretty disappointing. There is no reloading or ammo collecting or anything. Every weapon instead uses an overheating system, so you have to pace your shots or your weapon overheats and you have to wait. This has a certain sort of enjoyable feel to it, where you have to get into a rhythm of pacing your shots, but it's also less satisfying and less cool than actually using guns that have to reload and managing your ammo. Choosing new weapon upgrades and armor is really basic too. You just randomly collect a bunch of different guns, but really it's just a reskin of the same gun with different stats. Then you open up the equipment screen and just equip the gun that has the highest damage number. That's it. You can add some attachments to them, which do things like slightly increase the cooldown recovery or slightly increase the damage, but nothing crazy. You can equip different armors too, which makes you a lot tankier and makes your character look visually different, but it's pretty basic mechanically. Also, the camera perspective while shooting is kind of disappointing. You basically can't even see the weapon you're using. All you can see is your shoulder. It's just a bad camera angle. I don't know why they didn't tilt it over to the side a bit more so you can actually see your gun. It makes the combat a little less satisfying and less enjoyable, where you just stare at your guy's shoulder the whole time instead of actually being able to see what your gun is doing. There's all sorts of various enemies, and throughout the game it does introduce lots of new types, and some of the enemy AI is seriously menacing and brutal when they just sprint towards you and beat your face in with melee. So this is where the ability system comes into play. You press a button, and it brings up all these different perks you can use. It slows down the game world while you choose, and you can choose things like instantly reviving your whole squad, or boosting your shields, or boosting your health, stuff like that. Nothing crazy. Because I chose to play the most typical soldier brute class possible, which is the default class, it's strange how in the beginning of the game, there's an option to create your own class and your own custom character, but I can't see myself doing that, as the game's promotional material, box art, and all the advertisements are of John Shepard, so it just seems out of place to not play as him. So the combat is just alright. There's a lot of it. I beat the game in around 13 hours. I'd say maybe 7 of those hours were pure combat. The rest was a mix of dialogue and cutscenes, or exploring. Some of the worst problems and annoyances with the game is the level design, at times, and lack of coherent objective markers or indications of where to go. There's no marker helping you know where to go, so you have to constantly keep opening the pause menu and checking on your journal, then going to the map and setting custom waypoints of where you think you might have to go. Sometimes, there's some icons helping you steer in the right way, but they don't actually disappear when you arrive at the location, so it can be confusing to tell if you've already done something or not. This is a frequent annoyance, and it really slows down the pacing of the game. Just constantly looking at your journal and trying to figure out where it wants you to go next. Especially because sometimes it will be very vague and tell you to travel to an entirely different galaxy, where you can enter 6 different planets, and you're supposed to just aimlessly travel around these planets until you find the one that has the objective you need. It seemed that way at least, but usually if you try to follow the journal, you'll be roughly in the right place, but it won't really seem like it. You'll be constantly asking yourself, is this where I'm supposed to be? I can't tell if this is a side quest or not. Am I wasting my time? Is there anything even here? And then wandering around for 15 minutes until you find out, yeah, it's the right place. Other really bad annoyances are elevators. There are some levels that are quite literally just mazes of elevators. You walk through generic metallic box corridor sections that all look exactly the same, and then at the end there's an elevator where you have to sit in for 30 seconds just to find out it was the wrong elevator. So you go back down another 30 seconds, walk around the maze of corridors that all look the same, to take another elevator, to realize that that was the wrong elevator too, repeat. Sometimes there can be like 6 elevators in one area, and you have to just walk around in circles, taking each one over and over until you find the one that actually progresses. Totally boring and frustrating. There's quite a bit of vehicle sections in the game too. You will go through these planets on a vehicle called a Mako, which is a sort of APC-style military vehicle with rockets and machine guns. It has a fun physics-based boost jetpack button that I found fun to dick around with, but these sections mainly comprise of driving around completely empty, barren landscapes, trying to find the path where you need to go. Driving past most enemies, sometimes stopping to destroy turrets, and enemies blocking your path. It's not the most exciting part of the game, and honestly the game probably would have been better with less of these vehicle sections. They're sort of filler. And yeah, the save system can be a real drag. It sort of arbitrarily allows you to save whenever you want, and you have to keep remembering to check the pause menu to see if you can save, because if you forget to save, you can easily lose 20 minutes of progress and have to repeat some gigantic section again, just because you got one hit by a stray explosive. The pacing in the game is pretty decent and addictive though. At first, I was worried the game would just be a boring talking simulator, but like I said, luckily you can just ignore all the side quests, which I did, and you can pick all the dialogue options that just speed up conversations while acting like some kind of Duke Nukem badass. Then you just constantly go straight into the action. Your squad members always have something to say, and there's always constant cutscenes that don't really get in the way, but they add depth and atmosphere to your objectives. A lot of the writing and story is based upon the interaction between humans and other intelligent species, with themes of racism or speciesism quite frequently, and politics, and trying to make these moral decisions constantly with a paragon and renegade morality system. Although I never really noticed what that system did, the constant moral choices and quality of writing made it worth it to sit through the constant cutscenes and dialogue choices. There's a decent variety in locations and places you explore. There's a hub-style world with all sorts of bars and optional NPCs to talk to. You can fly around freely to all sorts of different galaxies and planets, which is admittedly pretty confusing and kind of feels pointless. You go from wintry planets to indoor sci-fi places to weird zombie alien layers, and then orange-red planets. There's even a planet like a giant beach water level. But there's no level that really stands out or is very memorable. They're all quite generic as actual levels, but there is some variety to keep you interested at least. The game has an RPG stat system, where you will frequently be getting levels just by killing enemies and completing objectives. The stat system is quite basic, but also has enough depth to not be trivial. And it's not too complex where it's a chore to interact with, and you don't have to worry that you'll ruin your character. For me, I chose to just maximize all the health and armor-based upgrades first, ignoring the speech options because I'm more interested in combat. And then, after I maxed all the health upgrades, I chose to focus on shotgun and damage upgrades. It worked quite well, and the difficulty of the game was just right. But towards the end, I was feeling pretty overpowered with almost everything I wanted maxed out, even despite ignoring all side quests. Your squad members level up too, though it seems like you have no influence over what they get. They just automatically level and get new abilities they can use. The game does have a certain level of freedom and multiple ways to tackle objectives, but if you're just here for a pure solid third-person shooter, it's not really great for it. If you want to play like I did and skip most of the side quests and optional content and go straight for the action, then the just average core combat mechanics and lack of proper navigation, and the elevators and sometimes bad level design, makes the game just a decent experience. At least I beat it fairly quickly, in around 12 hours, so it's not overly long or gets to the point of being past its welcome. And the story did have a lot of interesting twists and turns, and memorable characters, and some boss fights. Halfway through the game, it starts to introduce the standard zombie trope, which I found mildly entertaining and fun, but it really feels like this game is just the baseline of what would later be enhanced and improved upon in future Mass Effect games. The dialogue and writing is pretty good, for the most part. If you're the kind of person that cares about that in video games, then there's a lot of it for you. The facial animations and model details are still very impressive for a 2007 game. It's ahead of its time in that department. But again, I'm not really the kind of person that cares that much about story or writing in games. But even still, I did have a certain level of entertainment with all the dialogue. And when I got tired of it, there was always an option for me to just hurry up with it without feeling like I'm ruining the experience. Also, the game is probably better with a controller, and was more designed with that in mind. The controls are pretty good and intuitive. No complaints with the controls really. A few nitpicks with the cover system and accidentally pressing dialogue options when I'm trying to skip the previous one, or constantly accidentally talking to my squad members when I was trying to sprint, but nothing major. I think the other Mass Effect games in the series are going to be an improvement on this first game. This first one seems to just set up the foundation, but doesn't really refine or nail the combat mechanics. 6 out of 10.
You seem distressed. Is there something I can do to help?
Alarmed response. You overheard that, did you? This is all going so wrong, and it is the Asari consort's fault. She's the one who started all this.
What did this Asari do to get you so upset?
I cannot speak more about this problem. It is too sensitive. Suffice it to say, she has compromised my authority as a diplomat.